welcome back. This week on Brief Reviews Plays for Class, we are going to talk about the play Colossal. So it was written by this cool looking dude with an earring named Andrew Hinderaker. Portions of it he worked real closely with this guy that directed it, Will Davis. The play has a lot to do with masculinity. And there's a unique point of view taken by Hinderaker, whatever his name is, because he grew up as a football fan and it's about football. Alongside the point of view that we get from the director, Will Davis, who is a trans man. So, Andrew started writing this play before the first NFL player came out as openly gay, and before they had tighter restrictions on helmets and stuff, and before they paid back a bunch of people and lawsuits based on concussions and stuff. So a lot of this has to do kind of with those issues. And another important fact to note is that no theater can be granted rights to this play unless they have a disabled actor to play the main role. This play was continuously written, which I think is pretty cool. It was continuously written and changed throughout the rehearsal process of the first couple showings of it. So this Andrew guy showed up to all the rehearsals and stuff and took notes on what he should change, and so it kind of changed from each place that it was performed. It premiered in 2014 at the Only Theater in Only, Maryland. And its story surrounds a paralyzed football star, who is Mike, as he confronts his troubling past of being a trained dancer turned football star and a closeted gay man, and how he must learn to move on with his life. The main characters include Mike, as well as his younger self, subtly portrayed as young Mike, with the support of Jerry, the physical trainer, Damon, Mike's father, and Marcus, his former lover. The theme, I would say, is about the definition of masculinity and how it can change or different ways it can be expressed. And we're going to explore the 12 parts of Campbell's hero's journey with this play. So, Ordinary World. So, the Ordinary World is kind of set through the pre-game. So before the play actually starts, when audiences are entering, there are people on the football field, which is the stage, doing warm-ups and stuff. And while this is happening, Damon, Mike's father, is also dancing, because he owns his own dance company. That's his thing. He's a dancer. So he's dancing through in and out of these football players. And then Mike comes out in a wheelchair, and you can see that he's able to control the flow of the story, so he can stop everyone on stage while he can keep moving. And he gives a speech to the players about his accident. So his call to action is the arrival of young Mike. And you find out that young Mike and old young Mike and Mike can interact with each other. And they have competing goals. So the big dramatic question is, will Mike overcome young Mike and get to walk forward? We learn that Marcus, who is the shapeshifter in the show, not literally the shapeshifter, character function, has not been in touch with Mike since his accident, since he got paralyzed. So next comes the refusal of the call, where young Mike literally takes over the play, showing off his strength and ability, and then Mike kind of goes into the background. Next time we see Mike, wheelchair Mike, is he's fighting with his physical trainer, Jerry. He doesn't want to do the exercises that they're trying to do, and he's refusing to try because he doesn't believe he can walk again. And so obviously we meet the mentor, who's Jerry, who is his gay physical therapist, and he tries to remind Mike of how skilled and talented he was by telling one of the stories of his most amazing touchdowns from when he played. Young Mike is clearly in power in the background of these scenes. He is holding his skill and strength over Mike. In the Crossing the Threshold, we kind of see a comparison between young Mike and Mike. You get to see young Mike getting dressed, and then you see Mike trying to get dressed. So Mike tries to change into his PJs, and young Mike puts on his favorite t-shirt from when he found out he loved football. So his actual crossing of the threshold is a flashback to when Mike defeats the bullies on the football field and finds out he's actually pretty good at football. And the little fall on your face moment is when he gets hit because he got too cocky and thought that he could beat them over and over and over again. So our first complication in this story is Mike telling his father that young Mike telling his father that he wants to play football. And since his father is like a world-renowned dancer, he's super upset because he's wasting his training. Young Mike gets Mike to admit that he loved getting hit in football. It made him feel alive. It gave him a thrill, you know? Woo! Complication 2 is Mike is having a hard time telling Jerry why he got hurt. And young Mike is belittling him this whole time in his mind, telling him that he's a wuss for not being able to say this. So he tries to lie, but ends up telling the truth, that the reason he got hurt is because he was trying to protect Marcus on the football field. Complication 3 is dealing with his relationship with Marcus and learning to trust a man after Marcus. Jerry has to explain to him that he has to trust another man because Jerry has to hold him for him to be able to walk. While Jerry's trying to get Mike to stand up, there's a contrasting scene going on where the football players are training and they have to use a bungee cord and like run past the line. And so young Mike versus old Mike, who's gonna make it? So young Mike's trying to cross the line and Mike is trying to stand up out of his wheelchair. And young Mike crosses the line, therefore Mike loses and he just sits back down and doesn't make it to standing. So then we have our approach to Inmost Cave. And this play actually uses all 3 approaches that you learn about in Campbell's Hero's Journey. So the first one is there's a campfire scene when his dad hurts his ankle and Mike gets to take care of him for once instead of the other way around. And then there's the love scene with Marcus where young Mike tries to change what happened, tries to change the story of their past. And then there's like a shaman scene with Jerry, and he explains that all the men that he treats have been hurt by football, but it's a sport that both him and Mike love. If he will play the tape of him getting hurt to completion, because every time he plays it, he stops it before the accident actually happens, and he always ends up rewinding it so we can live in his past. And throughout this, he's battling young Mike, who's trying to get him to rewind so he can keep existing, because as soon as he press plays, young Mike doesn't exist anymore. It's only Mike in the wheelchair. This is the sword, and he watches forward in the tape, and we realize that Marcus wasn't the one that was next to him when he got hurt and holding his hand. He thought it was, but turns out it was actually his coach, and Marcus never came to comfort him. He just knelt with the rest of their players even when Mike was calling his name. So he relives the worst moment of his life, not the accident. The accident wasn't the worst moment, it was the betrayal of the person that he loved. So the road back, Mike confesses to his father about Marcus and how heartbroken he was, and that's why he's been so angry. The resurrection. Finally, after explaining all of this to his dad and why this is how he felt and why this is why he had so much pent-up anger, Mike trusts his father with his secret of Marcus and with his body, because he allows his father to try to help him to stand, like Jerry was trying to do earlier. And so the return of the elixir is Mike is able to stand, and we see the walker on the other side of the field. We need to make it there. There's a big connection between dance and football in this show. A lot of the movements are supposed to be performed kind of, like the football movements are supposed to be performed kind of like dancey. And I really liked it. I thought it was really unique, and I feel like it reaches out to a wider audience than most theatrical pieces. And I feel like most people can resonate with disappointing their parents by doing something that they wanted to do. And I loved the inclusion of having a disabled actor play the main role, as a way to show like a wider array of representation in theater. And it's a relatively short play, and I feel like I can recommend it to just about anyone, especially football fans or LGBTQ community and anyone else who's looking for a cool, like really innovative performance. So yeah, you have it. There you go. Peace.